Hello pirates, and welcome to part 2 of my series about building rivals. As you probably remember, in part 1 we covered the basics of this whole rival mechanic, how they augment each other through their auras and bonuses, and I used an example of a fleet with 3 liberators, 1 survivor and 1 oppressor. So now we're going to go a little bit deeper in the mechanic and use a different example, a fleet with 3 survivors, so survivor being the main component, or even 4 survivors and 1 liberator, okay, or maybe a liberator and something else. So as a recap from last video, remember, when building rivals, you don't have and you shouldn't have a fleet of 5 of the same ship. In other words, the days of building 5 identical ships, stacking them up and driving them together through the channel are pretty much over. You may get away with it against weak bases, but more often than not it's gonna fail. I recommend building 3 of each ship because it's easy to get 5 tokens in the TLCs, if you can do them, of course, and the TLCs rerun, so you can keep getting tokens, and usually builds of these rivals are around 12 days, meaning with 2 6-day tokens you can build a whole ship instantly, and that's how I got my 3 survivors, was pretty much insta building them with tokens. And having 3 of each, you can combine them and make them work for most situations. Again, it helps knowing the target, so you gotta look at the target and say, okay, is this heavily skewed towards ballistic, heavy skewed towards penetrative, radioactive, corrosive, which one is it? And then you combine. Now, people are now talking about this Voltron fleet, which is a fleet with 1 of each rival, and it's not a good combo. So people saying, oh, the Voltron fleet, I think even Kixai said that it's the ultimate. It's not the ultimate combo at all. Having 1 of each is cumbersome, very hard to drive, and I'll tell you, there's at least 1 of the ships that has a crappy bonus, the incinerator. Really doesn't help the other guys. We'll dive into that later. Driving them is hard, so if you can use macros to leave a ship in the corner while you control 4 of them or 3 of them, do it. Makes it a lot easier to drive. Otherwise, you see I try to drive it manually and it's hard. You see that in the sample hit I have at the. So adding on top of what I explained on the last video, part 1, here's what each rival brings to your fleet. So the Liberator gives all the other rivals 5,000 extra explosive deflection. The Oppressor gives 3,500 extra ballistic deflection, which is very good because most of the rivals have 0 ballistic deflection. So this is a very good bonus. The Survivor is the best. Okay, the Survival gives 21,000 penetrative deflection. And I should have mentioned, for all the bonuses listed here, they only apply once. So having 1 Liberator in the fleet gives 5,000 explosive deflection. Having 2 will not give you 10,000. It's not going to add up stack choice because the duplicate aura cap is 1. So as soon as you have 1 Liberator, you have 1 aura of that type coming from the Liberator, and that's it. Having a second, third, a fourth will not stack multiple times, so all you get is 5,000. Or from the Oppressor, all you get is 3,500 ballistic. That's it. No point in having more than 1, except for the Survivor, because the Survivor has the rival aura that has a duplicate aura cap of 1, and it gives 21,000 penetrative deflection once. But the Survivor has a second aura, okay, that applies to all Conquerors, not only rivals. So it applies to Prides, it applies to Sloths, it applies to Tier 5, anything that's a Conqueror. The Survivor gives them 2,000 explosive deflection and 1,500 corrosive deflection per Survivor in the fleet. So if you want to double that, you put a second Survivor in the fleet, and now you're getting 4,000 explosive and 3,000 corrosive. You add a third, and well, you get it, right? It adds up to 5 times. Okay, so, and by the way, it adds up with the Liberator aura. So for instance, you get 2,000 explosive from the Survivor, And that will stack with the 5,000 from the Liberator because these are two different auras. So the deflection stacks and you get 7,000, okay? Given to all rivals in the fleet, or, you know. And the 2,000 from the Survivor to all Conquerors in the fleet, not only rivals. So the Incinerator, and now you're going to see why it's useless. I mean, the Incinerator on its own, it's a good ship, don't get me wrong. But that bonus of 1,500 corrosive, guess what? You get the same from the Survivor, and the one from the Survivor stacks, and the Survivor will give you the penetrative deflection as well. So I mean, there's absolutely no reason to add one Incinerator to any rival fleet for that bonus. Unless you don't have a Survivor. Because the Survivor, in every way, shape or form, an angle you look at it, it's better, as far as the bonus goes, than the Incinerator. Then you have the Inquisitor, and that one gives 2,500 concussive deflection and plus 15 damage bonus to all types. So that's an interesting bonus. I mean, sometimes you need the concussive deflection, but you can always use 15% damage bonus, right? So that's a... Okay, so as I did in part 1, here in part 2, I'm gonna exemplify the whole thing with a combo that I actually use. So I have a combo that's 3 Survivors, okay, 1 Liberator, and 1 other rival. The other rival depending on the situation, okay? If I need ballistic deflection, I put an Oppressor in the fleet. If not, I could put an Inquisitor now, and that I haven't done that yet, but I would get the concussive deflection, okay, which the Survivor already has a good amount, 11,000 of it, but the Liberator has only 9,000, so maybe they benefit from it, but they certainly will benefit from the extra 15% damage, okay? Or you could just say, you know what, I'm gonna put 4 Survivors and 1 Liberator. That combo actually is very powerful. It's just that I don't have a 4th Survivor, otherwise I would certainly do that, okay? So let's look at it. Let's how we get to these numbers, okay? So start here, 150,000 penetrative deflection. That's base. Now you have a rival aura that adds 21,000, and that adds to all rivals in the fleet, including itself. So no other aura giving penetrative deflection. That means 150,000 plus 21,000, you get 171,000 penetrative deflection. You can survive any hyena, any executioner, any guarding ship with missiles. I mean, you're immune to them, okay? Next one, explosive. That's interesting. So the Survivor has no explosive deflection here, okay, but it has some in the aura. So you have 2,000 in the aura, and that's per Survivor in the fleet because it stacks up to 5 times. So if I have 3 Survivors, now it's 2,000 times 3, so 6,000, and I'm getting 5,000 from the Liberator, and that's how I get to 11,000 for every Survivor, okay? You could even look different. I mean, the Oppressor is going to gain the benefit too. So the Oppressor only has explosive deflection as it builds Bloodthirst. So it starts with 0, builds up to 4,000. But in this situation, it would start from the beginning of battle with 2,000 times 3 Survivors, so 6,000. It starts with 6,000 and it can go up to 4,000. And that's before you add any explosive plate. So maybe, you know, do you need explosive plates on it? Maybe not. And so, I mean, I'm not going to do one by one, but you get the idea. So that's how we get the Survivors having 11k concussive. Why? Because it's here and there's nothing else giving it more. If you needed more, you could put an Inquisitor here and get extra concussive deflection. Corrosive, it has nothing on the base block, but it has 1,500 on that stat that duplicates, the aura that duplicates up to 5 times, so times 3, 4,500, okay? And that's it, 4,500. And there's no way you can increase that more other than adding more Survivors, okay? Or You could say, oh, let's add an incinerator, but then again, why? Add another survivor, okay? And this guy has 10% splash damage reduction times 3 ships in the fleet, so you get 30% splash damage reduction. That's before you add any war plates, okay? So very solid fleet. It has decent deflections all around except for radioactive. No rival give radioactive deflection, so the only way you can gain that, it's either it's built in the hull, such as in the Oppressor, it's here in the Bloodthirsty stat block, up to 1000 starting from 0, or you add red plates. That's how. So here's a suggested survivor build. So last video I gave you a suggested liberator build. This video I'm giving you a suggested survivor build, and this one I'm using it. Actually, I had a different build originally, but I like to give a shout out to Traximundar. I hope I'm saying your name right. But he posted a comment on my video and said, hey, you know, I don't think 5 builds of the same type is wrong. I use 5 survivors all stacked and they work well. And then he said, oh, you know what, maybe in some scenarios. We had a good chat about it. And anyways, he shared his build, very kind of him. And he had a good idea. I mean, he was using crossbows. And I didn't think of that. I was using different cannons. And so I'm like, you know what? These guys have very high ship damage and stupid amount of wall and building damage. Okay, and without the reload bonuses and damage bonuses and everything, it's lightweight, it builds quickly, and packs a punch. I mean, so I changed my build and I used my tokens and I got 2 survivors done on top of the one I had with different cannons. So this is my build. It's not exactly like his. I made some changes. But it's pretty close. So thanks Traximundar for the suggestion. Very good idea. I tested, it works great. Okay, I'm still not running 5 of them. I only have 3. And again, 5 leaves you exposed to some things. But anyways, so cannon options, you can run the hammer, you can run millennium gun, you can run crossbows, you can run judgment. Here I put a mix of 1 millennium, 1 judgment, and the rest all crossbow trees. It's heavy. So if you want to put a 3rd piece of armor here or use a different special here, you're gonna have to go with lighter cannons. Okay. The core specials that everyone should have: speed system 5, siege battery 3, and agility system 3 or 4. I think these are pretty kind of mandatory. Okay. Then nuclear accelerator to give you the cannon range, and it also gives you accuracy and it also gives you speed. If you don't have it, hardened barrel 3 or augmented ballistic armament. That actually came out with the Justice. Not great for this Conqueror, but works. The 5th slot, high velocity rounds for higher projectile speed, more ballistic damage, and building and wall damage. Or if you don't have it, siege target 3 or drum reloaders or siege reloaders. They all help. But I think the best choice is HVR. For the final slot, and here you're going to be struggling for weight, ballistic upgrade or cryo battery or evade or speed upgrades. I mean, up to you. Keep in mind the survivor is a classical blitzer. Okay, may not look like it at first because the combat speed's 46, but as it kills stuff, it gets more and more and more speed, up to 75% combat speed, and it gets turn speed, which is already stupidly high. Okay, so you can actually drive by guards in a base even without killing them. Okay, I did it twice last night, and just go for the OP and the turrets in the center. I mean, you don't need to stop and kill stuff, and these crossbows will go through walls, right? I mean, they have that ability to actually get through buildings, having some decay in the damage while they kill things. So you can be hitting 2, 3, 4 rows of walls at the same time, damaging them at the same time. Okay, and I mean, let's look at the damage. It's stupid. I mean, 35,000 ship damage. The wall damage is a lot higher than that. That already includes the ballistic damage bonus you see here of 90% due to the specials and the ship. Then you have, again, a monster building and wall damage stacked because of HVR and siege battery and the ship base stats. Then you have some structured DPS. Then as you build Bloodthirst, you gain plus 90% ballistic damage. That's on the base damage here, and then this applies on top of it. Okay, then you gain 60% ballistic reload, and on that aura that duplicates up to 5 times per survivor in the fleet, you gain extra 15% damage, so in my case times 3, so I start with 45% extra damage, and 35% ballistic reload per survivor in the fleet. I have 3, so that's 105% faster, or shorter reload time, I should say. Alright, so that's the build, and next step I'm just going to show you, so people doing the end game TLC, there's one base in encounter number 4. I use this fleet, the Survivors with the Liberator, and then I put an Oppressor there, but you really don't need it because the only ballistic in that base is 2 ballistas and they fire really slow and don't do much damage. But that base in the endgame TLC has a lot of concussive damage, which you can easily address with 11,000 deflection, and has good amount of penetrating damage, which you can address with 171,000, right? So there's really nothing there that can hurt the survivors. Okay, there's some mortars, so that's why I put the Liberator in. It gives the survivor some extra explosive deflection on top of what it gets from the aura. So I did that base for 2 hours of damage. Okay, and I hit a player base as well. That's not in the video. And the survivor went in and out, like base was full of hyenas and full of executioners. They didn't scratch the paint. Okay, which shows the weakness of having a base that's extremely strong in one single damage type. Is you're going to be very good at killing many fleets, but there's going to be that one fleet that excels against that one damage type you have that's just going to walk right in. So the art of Battle Pirates here is finding the balance, right? Hope that was useful. I'll let you with the base hit there from the endgame TLC. Hope that was useful. Leave comments, subscribe, and share the video. Take care.